Welcome to Nifnex TV Perth. My name is Zeeshan Pasha and I'm your host. Nifnex TV is where small business challenges that you send in to us get addressed by an expert panel to help you grow your business. Now, the case study that we've got on our hands at the moment is a very unique and interesting challenge. With a small business owner, he's got his staff wanting to invest in the business. Now, should he be changing business structures? Should he allow a second person in the business and letting go of some equity? How's that going to affect the business? Should he be moving out from a home office into a serviced or a leasing, like a lease another premises? So let's check with the panel and see what they have to say. Jamie, Sonia, Daniel, welcome to the Nifnex TV, and thank you for being here to add your valuable expertise and knowledge into the case study. So obviously a fabulous case study here. So can we just go around introducing yourselves and what perspective you're going to add to this case study, and then we can get into it after. Jamie.
Yeah, I'm Jamie Vine, Liberty Executive Officers. I'm going to have an opinion with regards to workplace and real estate.
Nice. Serviced officers?
Yes.
Sonja?
Hi, Zee. Thank you for having me. I'm Sonja Pilkington, and I'm from Asset Financial Accounting. So I'll be having an accounting aspect to that, as well as looking at about different business structures you can look at.
Fabulous. Daniel, Entrepreneur of the Year.
Oh, thanks very much, Zeeshan, and thanks for having me here today. I'll be talking about the entrepreneurial mindset of the person in this case study, and also talking about the issues with ownership in respect to whether an individual should get a co-founder, and what are the pros and cons of going into a partnership with somebody else, and in particular, in this case, with one of the case study's staff members.
Let's get right into it, I guess, and we'll stick with you, Daniel.
Sure.
Now, with the case study, it's a classic one where you started from a home office. Now you've got your staff wanting to say, "Hey, I believe in what you're doing. I want to join the business. I want to put some money into it." That's obviously a great thing, but is an entrepreneur sort of ready to let go of his domain, so to speak, and the way he runs his business or her business?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, and I think the first question that the individual needs to ask themselves is whether that individual that's coming on board as a staff member, are they going to add incremental value to the business moving forward? If the person is giving away an equity position, 20 or 30%, what is that business owner going to get in return? And that is the first question that should be posed to the person who's looking to getting this another person on board. The second question I would ask is what type of skills and what type of attributes or core competencies does this person have to bring to the business? So, for example, if the business that we're talking about is in marketing, are there two individuals who have marketing core competencies? Yeah. Now, in this situation, we can obviously see there might be some differences of opinions, and this might be problematic moving forward. If, however, there's two different sets of core competencies, so one person's involved with sales, another one's more of a technical individual, then you can see the reasons of why this particular startup could, have a reason to have two individuals. So I always look at it from the perspective of the value add of having another person coming on board, and particularly when you're sacrificing so much equity on how much value that individual is going to contribute towards the business.
True.
Yeah.
And I guess moving along to Jamie, once a person's come on board, working from home office may not always suit everyone. When I was moving out of my home office, I had reasons for that, but then the reason was really that I didn't want staff coming home on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Having their own home offices is fantastic, but would you like to give your input on why serviced office, or should they be leasing somewhere else?
Yeah, of course. In terms of why people should, in theory, get out of a home office, I think there's a lot of distractions at home. There's a lot of the ability to clock in and clock out when you feel like it. And depending on your personal circumstances, there could be young families, there could be school runs, there could be other things going on in the home that aren't always easy to close behind the door. And I've had personal experience of that when launching Liberty. I think that's the first thing, is why get out of home, and then why look at this kind of environment, a serviced office environment. Well, certainly in our case, what we focus on is, and the reason we're called Liberty, is to give our clients the freedom to focus on their business. So we take away all the distractions that come with running an office, and give people the ability to focus entirely on what they do best. You know, and coming back to Daniel's point in terms of having a complement of people, you know, I think one of the things that I looked at, which again works for me, is I don't think, very few people are good at everything. You know, so if you're good at something and you're not so good at something else, then there can be a lot said for outsourcing, whether that be internally or externally, that particular skill set, so you can spend more time doing what makes you money.
Yep.
And that really lends itself to the conversation about bringing in an employee and outsourcing this kind of environment.
Okay, speaking of money, that we should really get Sonja into this one. So what would be the pros and cons of getting a second person or a staff member on board, also letting go of equity and, again, you know, business structures?
If I can just go back a little step and say, well, if the employer or the business owner is looking at either moving out from home and moving into an office, whether it's leased or virtual offices or whatever, he also needs to look at that and see what the impact on his cash flow is going to be. Because working from home, you actually have very little expenses going out. We're having an office, whether it's however you look at it, there's setup costs, there's a whole bunch of things that the business owner has to look at. And by doing a cash flow, he will probably understand what the impact is going to be of that. Then the second issue is, well, as Daniel said, whether he wants to give up equity. So what structure is he currently trading as? Is he a sole trader? I would assume so, because it's easy to set up and people generally start off as a sole trader. He then has options to say, well, maybe he wants to become a partnership, to change it to a partnership, and that's easy done as well. Again, he needs to have some kind of legal agreement about what percentage he's giving up and what the staff member is actually going to give back.
Yeah.
And also understand that the risk involved in a partnership is that the other partner or both partners are cerebrally liable for any debts that the other partner incurs, whether they know about it or not, and that's a huge risk.
Yeah.
And if his employee knows that he's going to be liable for the debt that the business owners are going to incur, he might think about it twice. There are other options like companies, where the setup of that is quite expensive.
Yeah.
Lots of compliance that needs to be dealt with as well, and you need some expert advice on that. It's easier to have a bit of a removal for all asset protection, so the employee or the potential business owner will have less of impact or can protect his assets. And then there's a fourth option of having a trust. That is probably more the flavour of the month currently, and people like to do trust, because you have a bit of flexibility, or more flexibility than a company, but you still have the protection of a company or a trust, where your assets are protected and somebody can't come after your assets as easily as if you're a sole trader.
So ideally you'll have a trust and then operate another company.
You can probably have, I would suggest, a corporate trustee, so you have a layer above the trust, and that has nothing. So the corporate trustee will look after the trust. You can then either have a trust, another company in that, or just have beneficiaries. Having beneficiaries is probably easier, and the beneficiaries pay the tax. The trust has no tax obligations whatsoever.
So ideally they just come and speak to you.
Ideally they come and speak to me, that's fine.
Speaking about company and trust side of things, do the companies need to have been trading for a certain amount of time? Because I think that's one of the questions they had.
To take an office?
To take an office?
No, I mean, our only requirement to take a business on is we do a Dun & Bradstreet check, but that's more to verify they are who they say they are. It's not to test their financial capabilities or anything like that, because we take a 2-month retainer from people, which gives us enough comfort to manage their exposure. But yeah, I mean, our only obligation to our landlords is to demonstrate that we know who our clients are from a safety and security point of view.
That's good. Then going back to Daniel there, once you move out of the home office situation in serviced offices, you have chosen to do You haven't taken up a office as such.
No, we haven't, Zeeshan. What we're doing right now is going through a 3-month experimentational period where we're going to see whether or not working from home and using things like Skype and some collaborative tools online such as Asana work well for us. And we can already see some issues coming to play already with the collaborative efforts that we engage in. So when we think about the next Switch My Loan marketing campaign, doing that via email, you kind of lose that creative vibe of interacting with your staff members, and it's something that really can't be expressed over a webcam. So the importance of getting together and sharing those collaborative efforts when you're all in one room, I think is very powerful. And what Jamie, I think, offers here is a type of arrangement where you can, hire out a room for, 2 or 3 hours, let's say, and come here on a temporary basis. So it's going to reduce your financial risk of, getting a massive lease out for perhaps, a boardroom or a meeting room that you're not going to use on a frequent basis. So when those needs arise, you can always come into the office and have those collaborative moments, set down your deliverables and your task dates and when those tasks are due, and then go off and do the work individually. And I think that is a growing trend, I think, amongst small businesses who don't want to engage in, these lengthy lease agreements and all the background checks you have to go through to get an office space, and of course the cash considerations as well. So yeah.
I'd agree with that. I think what Daniel's described there is it's got two kind of sides to it. The one is that you don't want to have space that you're not using and you're paying for, so therefore things like meeting rooms, etc. But on the plus side to that, in terms of not having it available all the time, when you do book it, you make sure you get the most out of that time. So you're a lot more focused in terms of the time you spend together than you would be if you just had to pop next door and use it for half an hour because it was there. Exactly. I think you get a lot more out of those sessions when you've pre-booked it and considered what it is you're going to actually talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Moving away from service office, so to speak, and more entering towards the mentality or the mindset of entrepreneurs, it's hugely different compared to a staff member who's then now taking on an entrepreneurial journey with another existing business. Do you think it's the same, the mentality from the staff perspective or setting up another business?
I think staff generally see it as it's a job,
Yeah.
and they forget to see that they are responsible for the dollars and cents, and they are responsible for whatever they spend. If you're a staff member, it's easy just to take another stamp or another envelope. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When you're paying for it, you think about, oh, am I really going to mail this?
Yeah.
And yes, it might be as basic as that, and the same comes to when you have an office.
Yeah.
A staff member might go, I would like to have an office. And
Yeah.
you go, geez, it's going to cost me how much just to
Yeah.
have an office?
Mm.
And yes, it takes a long while for
Yeah.
a staff member to come out of that I'm an employee
The zone.
to I'm a business owner. And if they start thinking as a business owner, there's a whole shift in what they do, how they do it,
Yeah.
and in some ways they can become twice as productive than what they were as an employee. I'm sure you would agree with that.
Oh, I can only embellish Sonja's comments there, and just I think the process of entrepreneurship for most people probably begins before they start a company.
Yeah.
People generally don't wake up and register a company and start trading in a couple of weeks. It's a long thought out process which starts on an idea and a hunch, and to go through that process and execute the start to a stage where it's trading, I think can take a lot of time. So if an employee is under the understanding they come into the business, they make a cash contribution and they operate in this business from day one, I think sometimes can be misguided. I think giving away a part of your business to another individual, obviously the amount of money they invest would be indicative to their commitment to the business. So as an entrepreneur, if I was going to take on a co-founder, you would look at the contribution they're making financially and also from a productivity perspective about what skills they have, and then make a decision based on those two factors. And what Sonja mentioned before about the operation of the business, I mean, these are the realities that often people working in a business never even consider because there's no financial risk that's attached. So the adjustment period to say this co-founder coming on board to now realising they do have risks and responsibilities just like the original founder had, I think that process could take 1 or 2 months, and I think it would be wise for the founder of the business to support that individual in that transition process from firstly having been an employee to now being a part of the business legally and financially.
Great point.
Yeah.
Should we, do you have any parting thoughts as such, because I think we're getting close to the end. Do you have any tips for...
I mean, I think the one thing we haven't really touched on is culture.
Yeah.
And I think, I guess a lot of it comes out of what we've said in terms of that interaction. But I think certainly for me to be inspired enough to become entrepreneurial, I spent a lot of time working with very entrepreneurial people who inspired me to do it. And I think you can't do that from a home office. What's the right word? The transition from employee to entrepreneur won't happen because you bought some shares. It's going to be something that rubs off on people over time, and it's not an overnight process. But I think whether that be a small office in Como to a serviced office in the city to a bigger home office, but I think the need to be together in that environment is quite important.
I agree with you. It's just the whole thing about being in business by yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what can happen so easily if you're working from home by yourself.
Yeah.
And not surrounding you with other people.
Yeah.
So if you are in that position where you are working from home, you probably should make sure that you go out and mingle or network or just engage with other people. Anybody else than just being at home.
We found the majority of our clients, because of our location, do a lot of business in coffee shops up and down St George's Terrace, and you can't do that from your home office.
No.
So it's that ability to just be in the middle of it.
I guess the twist to it is if the husband and wife operating the business and a third person comes in and wants to put some money into it, is it hard for the husband and wife to then go get a third person in? Because they're probably going to spend a lot of time at home together discussing work, and they probably can't get away without discussing work. And how's the third person going to actually...
I think that would be a very difficult dynamic if you had two people living together and the one that wasn't. I think that'd be you'd always feel like the outsider, I think, if you were the person that was coming into that. I'd find that very difficult to cope.
Oh, absolutely. I think the husband and wife team is probably another discussion.
So, I agree with that.
Family trust.
Then there's a trust issue.
The real trust. No, perfect. Do you have any parting words at the moment? I just want to wrap it up quickly.
Sure.
Well, from Daniel,
I think I'll just say that from a practical perspective moving forward and making an assessment of the individual that's coming on board to the business is writing down a checklist of all the things, all the core competencies that you do very well, and then getting the other person to write down the same list, and then coming together and comparing what you guys do effectively, and that way when you come down to the point of getting agreements together, and then you can assign the division of labour on who's going to do what in the business. So I think that's an excellent starting point of two individuals coming together and forming a partnership and going ahead like that.
Fabulous. Thank you. Let's wrap it up, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We should we'll catch up next month for the next segment.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a great discussion, wasn't it? Thank you to the panel for their time, and also for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. If you're a small business owner and you've got challenges that you're facing in business, send them in to us and we'll get that addressed by a expert panel. Like us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, watch the other case studies we put up, pick up a paper from 150 locations in Perth, and again, come along to our networking events that we run. I always say, when the right people come together, magic happens. See you next time.